Well, in my high school days, Mr. Chapman, my American history and world history teacher, Maddie Mae Brown, she made us remember the tributes that came forth from all the presidents, and the one that stood out in my mind the most in these days was Chester A. Arthur, who literally enforced the tariffs and brought this country to the point where it had a major surplus of money during his tenure of 1881 to 1885, and that was during the long depression. And yet, if shirts and shoes or belt buckles or trousers or anything that was manufactured outside the United States, if it could be made in the United States, there was a tariff on anything that was brought in to equal what it cost to make in the United States. And the tariffs were going out to the point where when he left office, there was so much surplus, it was embarrassing. He was embarrassed. And I can't understand why we don't have tariffs today.
Because he did the right thing, and Andrew Jackson and Garfield and others did the same thing. And you know, there's a few good men in the course of time, and I only hope that there are some people who can fill in who are in their 50s and 60s who are not controlled by these evil people. Ron Paul and I are the same age, and we're long past being able to do what we'd like to do because we're too old.
I got news for you, Mr. Chapman. Mr. Chapman, no. Today's 70 is yesterday's 50.
Well, if working 16 to 18 hours a day for both of us is any criteria, I'll agree with you.
Okay? I mean, I get this told to me all the time by the girls over in Russia. This says American men may be 60, but they act like they were 40, and those that are in their 70s act like they're 50, and they keep going strong. It's just like you and your wife. Y'all go strong. You can't lie to me. You're working how many hours a week? Tell me. 30 shows?
Last week we did over 30 hours of programming on radio. But I was on a program this morning, Goal Seek, which is computer generated. And I've been doing the program, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years since it started. And so Chris Wojak, who is the commentator on the program, he said, well, what is your blood pressure? And I said, well, it's not very good. And he said, well, what is it? I said, it runs between 100 and 110 over 65 to 70. He says, you've got to be kidding me. And I says, no. And I says, I've never been sick in my life except a cold or a flu or taking GI gin when I was in basic and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Do you remember that GI gin?
A variety of remedies.
Do you remember that stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, when you had a cold.
Yeah, my grandmother would.
A lot of guys that go to a lot of guys that go to sick call just to get a couple of bottles because it had so much alcohol in it.
That's right. That's very true. Very true. You get a little time off from running that 3-mile course.
Of course, Marines would never do a thing like that. Only guys in the Army.
No. Yeah, okay. I remember. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Me too.
I mean, those of us that have served in any branch of the military understand what sick call was really all about. Okay, and most of the doctors knew it. They just do it and admit it out loud. They were Navy doctors, and they said, well, these guys need a little rest.
Well, I got to tell you a funny story, and the reason I'm telling you is that the man who was with me became famous. When the government came to draft, in the olden days they used to draft people, and I took a bunch of tests, and they said, you can take any job you want, and then they offered me counterintelligence, and I said, sure, that sounds like something good, I'll go do that. Well, another fellow was drafted at the same time I was. He was a year younger than me, and so we went to Fort Dix together, and we bunked in the same bivouac area, and we were out, doing these field exercises, and we didn't want to get up one morning, so we both went to sick call, and so the doctor looks at it and he says, "Real blankety bang buddies, huh?" And then he made us dry shave. The other guy who was with me, who went to high school with me, was Bobby Pickett, and he was the guy that made Monster Mash. If you can remember that it's become a classic. And he was always kidding around when he was a kid, acting like Boris Karloff. And we had a lot of fun when we were kids together, but he died of leukemia a couple of years ago. But I thought it was a funny story, and I didn't like dry shaving.
Well, I guarantee that was the punishment in platoon 2072. If you messed up before you went to the latrine area, i.e. they call it the head, you ended up doing a dry shave.
Oh, God, that was awful.
The gunny would hand you a razor and say, "Go shave your head, boy."
Yeah, well, you tear them out by the roots is what you do.
Yeah, it was the dead thing. Well, we're going to take a break, Mr. Chapman, and we'll be back here in about 2.5 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. We've got Bob Chapman. We're just chatting today. There's a lot of things out there, and yeah, Pete is up there in Vermont. He has a little question, and I want you to think about it. I'll introduce the question. When we come back from the break, Mr. Chapman, you can give us the answer. Ask Mr. Chapman, does he believe that the FDIC and the Social Security agencies really have money and exist? Let's see. It stinks to holy hell out here in my world, and the worst thing I can say is that it may not exist, but I'd like to hear an answer from him. You think about that little question. It's pretty deep. And ladies and gentlemen, this is Drew Rains, a Marines Disquisition, heard live around the world on Wind Talkers Radio Network. We'll be back in about 2.5 minutes. Go ahead.